What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. This is another Star Wars Mandalorian video. Today we're going to be continuing our recaps of The Mandalorian Season 1. Today we'll be talking about Episode 7, The Reckoning. And then next video will be on Episode 8. And then I'll start talking about some new content that's been coming out regarding the Clone Wars series that's coming up in a couple weeks. So, Episode 7, The Reckoning, we find the Mandalorian in space, and he gets a call from Grief Karga. And Karga basically tells him that more Imperials have showed up since he left Navarro. And he wants to see if he can bring the asset, or Baby Yoda, with, and if they can try to destroy the client and all the Imperials there so that it's beneficial towards both of them. And he said he would pardon the Mando from the guild, basically make him a free man, because he doesn't want people. He doesn't think that the Mando should have people chasing him for the rest of his life. So the Mando agrees to this, but he also thinks that Karga could he could double cross him. So what Karga does is he goes back to Sorgon, and he asks Cara Dune if she could help. And at first she tells him no, but then he tells her that it's Imperials there, and she said, you should have started with that, and I'm in. So Cara Dune goes on the ship, and they start talking, and she picks out some weapons, and that's when we see Baby Yoda kind of take control of the ship, and then she asks who's going to take care of him. So that's when Mando says, I know the perfect person, and they go back to Arvala 7, and he goes to see the Ugnaught. So this is where the Ugnaught tells him his name's Queel. And he asks for Queel's services to come help, and Queel brings with 3 blurgs for them to ride while they're on Navarro. So they make their way to Navarro, and he runs into Grief Karga, and Karga's kind of surprised to see that he brought backup, and Karga actually brought some backup bounty hunters of his own. And he looks at Baby Yoda and sees, like, well, what is this, all the trouble been about this little kid? So they come up with a plan at their campfire that night. And during the time that they're coming up with their plan, they're attacked by, they look like Binocs from Episode 5. They're kind of like vampire sucking bats, like big ones, from what I see. And what happens is Karga gets either scratched or bit by one of them, and there's a poison inside, and it's basically spreading. So Cara Dune's trying to help him, seeing if there's any med packs, and that's when Baby Yoda comes over, and he force heals him. So this is the first time we see force healing, and it's actually foreshadowing to what Rey does in Episode 9. Rey force heals the serpent, and she force heals Kylo Ren, or Ben Solo, and then Ben force heals her. So I thought that was pretty cool, because there's been talks of force healing before, but we hadn't seen it on the live screen yet. So then the next day, they're on their way to town at Navarro, and Grief Karga says, well, I guess this is it. And he turns around and he shoots both of his bounty hunters. And he basically tells the Mando, Cara Dune, and Queel that it was his plan to basically kill them and bring the asset, But after what he saw last night, he couldn't go through with it. So what their plan next is Queel was to take the asset back to the ship, and Cara Dune was to go with Grief Karga and bring in the Mandalorian with just the sleeping pod that Baby Yoda was in, but empty. So they walk into town and they go see the client, and the client basically, thanks Grief Karga for bringing him in and the asset, and thanks Cara Dune for the help, and then asks if he can see the baby. So that's when they're kind of distracting the client so that the Mando can shoot and kill him. And then the client asks to see the baby, and he gets a call. One of his stormtroopers tells them that he has a call. So he goes over to the bar and opens up like this hologram. And it's this guy, and his name's Moff Gideon. So if you remember, there's a bunch of Moffs. They're regional governors that control each system, kind of. And their Grand Moff Tarkin was like the head of all the Moffs. So this Moff Gideon basically tells him, did they bring the asset? And the client says yes. And he said, you better double check, because he thinks that they brought an empty, pod. So then what happens is we see a bunch of blaster shots coming into that bar. A bunch of stormtroopers get killed. The client gets killed. And it's Cara Dune, Cara Dune, Grief Karga, and the Mando are kind of being staged in there. They're being held up inside the bar. And that's when we see outside that there's a bunch of Death Troopers. So Death Troopers were the black stormtroopers from Rogue One that were with Director Krennic. They're more of a high-class stormtrooper. So they're staged up in there, and they're waiting in there, and the Mando calls out to Queel and tells him to get to the Razor Crest and leave. So he's on his way to the ship with the blurg, and there's two Imperial scout troopers that hear the transmission, hear the call to tell him to leave, and they basically go after Queel and the kid. So during this whole time that they're staged up in there, a TIE fighter comes flying out of space and comes to Navarro. And this is actually the first time we see a TIE fighter. Its wings actually folded in half. I didn't think that they could do that, but I thought that was pretty cool. And out of the TIE fighter comes Moff Gideon. And he basically tells them that, you have something I want. You may think you know what it is, but you don't. And I think that Moff Gideon knows the species of Baby Yoda. I think that might be revealed in season 2. That would be pretty cool. And then he says, in a few moments, it will be mine. And during this time, the Mando's still trying to contact Queel. And Queel's probably 100 yards from the ship when one of the scout troopers blasts the blurg, kills the blurg, kills Queel, and then picks up Baby Yoda and goes on his way back to Navarro. And that's how the episode ends. So I thought it was pretty cool that we got to see all like the characters, the main characters, like all the friends come together. And I thought it was cool to see like the big bad guy finally come in during the series, Moff Gideon. And then obviously we'll see how much worse he is in episode 8 when I recap that. I was kind of sad that they killed off Queel. He was one of my favorite characters because he kind of had a Master Yoda kind of style to him. But overall, I thought it was a good film or a good episode. Um, Probably one of the better episodes in the first season. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Always hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys to wrap up the Mandalorian season 1 recap. Thanks, guys.